Coming up on Your Horizon. Well, during the presidential debates, only 2 other countries were mentioned more times than Mali, a West African nation that some believe could turn into the next Afghanistan. I'll visit with an Oklahoman who worries that democracy is being threatened there in his homeland.
It's controlled by Islamist groups. It's controlled mainly by Al-Qaeda and other groups calling themselves Mujahou, which is a movement for unity and jihad in West Africa.
I'll sit down with the youngest university president in America, Langston's Kent Smith.
Especially the one where a lot of HBCUs derived from. I believe it still plays a relevant role in today's society, but mainly when I think of the role is to provide opportunities that will not be provided otherwise for certain individuals.
And we celebrate a very special birthday. Stay with us for Oklahoma Horizon.
Oklahoma Horizon is made possible by the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education.
Oklahoma's investment in Career Tech provides more than nationally recognized technology education and training. It produces solid financial returns for the state's economic future. Oklahoma Career Tech, elevating our economy.
And the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping good people grow good things. And now, from the Career Tech Studios in Stillwater, here's your host, Rob McClendon.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Horizon. Well, for years, the sprawling African nation of Mali was one of the continent's best examples of a fledgling democracy, until earlier this year, when a group of junior officers staged a coup. In the uncertainty that ensued, rebels with ties to Al-Qaeda grabbed control of an enormous triangle of land about the size of Texas, creating what the U.S. State Department says is a powder keg for terrorist activity, even drawing a direct link between these rebel groups and the attack on the U.S. consulate in Libya that left the American ambassador and others dead. In 2007, I traveled to this West African nation to work on a State Department project, and what I found is now eerily prophetic.
It's the rhythm of an industry that goes back centuries. Workers beating the wrinkles out of traditional African cloth. One of the few jobs in this village just outside the Mali capital. Here, entire families work together, dyeing the fabric in a chemical stew that too often finds its way into the local water supply.
In each compound, you can see a traditional well, but this water may not be healthy.
A necessary risk to bring travelers and their currency to town.
Let me tell you that girls, even boys in this kind of area, face many challenges, social challenges. So they are vulnerable to HIV, prostitution, drugs, robbery. Because you can see everyday's life is a struggle. They struggle to survive.
Asaman Alassane Megan knows something about poverty. University-trained English teacher, Asaman can make more money showing tourists the sights of his native land. A great job in Mali, considering 75% of Africans under the age of 30 are unemployed.
Because Mali is a country that the statistics tell us is surviving on a family income of $2 a day or less, there's a tremendous amount of poverty, which means malnutrition factors into the situation as well.
The head of a relief organization, Ken Kiristed, has worked in West Africa for decades.
In Africa, the biggest challenge I think one can take as a continent as opposed to each individual country, it's bringing or helping to encourage the people to reach a standard of life where they can take care of basic things such as food, health care, nutrition, proper education, and a social environment that is nurturing as opposed to one that is in conflict all the time.
A former French colony, Mali gained its independence in 1960, only to suffer under dictatorship until a military coup in 1991 that led to free elections, creating a democracy in an area surrounded by unrest, civil war, and fundamentalism.
Now, Mali is really a focus country for the United States. It's a place that where democracy is functioning.
Terrence McCulley is U.S. Ambassador to Mali.
We look at Mali as a place that has underlying stability, that has had social peace, and that has moved forward in a very steady and successful way in consolidating democratic institutions.
Despite such social progress, Mali remains the third poorest nation in the world. With few natural resources, most in the countryside depend on subsistence agriculture, a difficult livelihood even in areas not covered by the Sahara Desert. In the city, life is also hard. Streets are crowded with people dressed in a disarray of secondhand Western clothes, trying to earn a living any way they can. Over the next 5 years, the U.S. will invest close to $500 million in Mali through the Millennium Challenge Corporation, a program designed to reduce poverty through economic growth, with more than half of the money to increase irrigated acreage.
There is no more important issue for Mali than agriculture. It's an economy which is largely, I think, 90% agriculture-based. It's a country which, if it's going to develop economically, needs to develop its agricultural sector.
And while the U.S. may well be the largest provider of foreign aid, we certainly aren't alone in trying to make inroads here. An Islamic nation, Mali has long been a meeting place of cultures, linking sub-Saharan Africa with the Arab-influenced countries of the desert.
While Mali is stable, you have a vast ungoverned space in the north, which has been a space where all kinds of bad guys have been operating, if you will, for hundreds of years. You've got cigarette smugglers, you have arms traffickers, you have human traffickers. And in recent years, there's been a terrorist group, which used to be called the GSPC, the Salafist Group for Preaching and Combat, which has in recent days rebranded itself as Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which has taken refuge in the north and is using it as a base of training and operations.
And while Mali has been spared the suicide bombings that have torn through neighboring countries, many fear a violent form of Islamism could spread here among the poorest of the poor.
In Africa, we used to say, an empty stomach doesn't have a brain. So they do not have a choice. Sometimes religious sects, or be it Christian or Muslim sects, tries to interfere or to get in these people. As if you can see this small girl, she doesn't know what is religion, but they try to cultivate in her this culture because she has no choice.
Making Mali's path to economic success surprisingly linked to our own national security.
And joining me now in our studio is our translator, Osman Maghi, now a doctoral student at Oklahoma State University. Well, Osman, I was struck in watching that video that we shot several years ago, just how prophetic some of the things that you were saying to us. It was almost like you were trying to educate us while we were there, that this was going to be an issue.
Yes, what is happening in Mali, we could see is some years ago because of the infiltration of Islamist groups and also because of this fight between the government of separatist Tuareg groups. So we could say that something is smelling that in the future something may happen with religions, because I could see these Afghans, Pakistanis groups coming to Mali, crossing Bamako, which is the capital city, to talk about Islam, to make lecture. And I did understand about these very strong extremist people coming. You could see them earlier in 2017 in Mali.
And to educate people a little bit about the geography of Mali, we were down there in Bamako, which is in the southern part of Mali, and then you actually grew up in Timbuktu, which is in the northern part of the country.
Yes, I was born and raised in Timbuktu, which is actually many people know about it, which has been a very famous city in the 11th century because of its role in the Trans-Saharan, and also because of Timbuktu was hosting one of the most famous universities in the early universities, which is University of Sankore.
Yeah, one of the oldest universities in the world.
Yes, in the world. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Which is University of Sankore. So which is still in Timbuktu, because as you know, Timbuktu still has thousands of manuscripts which date back to the 11th century, and for which people travel to Timbuktu. So Timbuktu is a very touristic city. But unfortunately today, Timbuktu is not controlled by the government of Mali.
It's controlled by the rebels.
It's controlled by Islamist groups. It's controlled mainly by Al-Qaeda and other groups calling themselves Mujao, which is a movement for unity and jihad in West Africa, and another group which is Ansar Din, which is also a very dangerous group. Actually, in the early April, Timbuktu was controlled by both MNLA, which is the Tuareg groups, the Tuareg group, and also by these Islamists. But
what has that meant for day-to-day life now in that, well, I'm just calling it rebel-controlled, you're calling Islamic extremist-controlled parts of Mali now, which is now about 2/3 of the country?
Yes.
What's life like?
Oh, life is very hard. Life is very hard because today the markets are closed. There is no foodstuff in the markets, so the banks are closed. Public services are closed. Hospitals can, with a very difficult, are suffering very difficult situation because lack of medicine. So life is very hard. And people are obliged to go to bordering countries or to Bamako. So today we have about 300,000 people who are displaced within the country. And we have about 500,000 people who are displaced in the bordering countries like Niger, Algeria, Burkina Faso, and Mauritania.
So essentially about 500,000 people that are refugees in some form or
yes,
or fashion.
So we have two forms of refugees. We have refugees within the country and also refugees within the bordering countries.
We've heard quite a few reports of human rights violations. What your friends tell you? What have you seen?
Yes, because, you know, these people, when they came to the north of Mali, now they said, we want to use our own law, which is Sharia law, according to them. So now they have been cutting hands of some people, and they have also been now, before, with the MNLA and other groups, they have abused of girls and women, and also some now, like if they find a couple, an unmarried couple, they slash it them, they give them 100 slashes.
Beatings, yes.
Yeah, beatings, yes. And it is forbidden today in Timbuktu to smoke a cigarette or to watch TV or to play football or to stay outside your house with your friends having some tea. So actually, human rights is a big issue in this area today.
But what does it mean for women in Mali?
For women in Mali, or, okay, in this area today, life is impossible for women, because they are suffering. They don't have any right. They have to stay home. They have to, even if they have to go out, they have to be covered. So they can do anything today. Women are, like, if I can use the word, I will say that they are confined. So these Islamic groups, they want to confine women. Today they don't have any right. They have to stay home. They can't wear anything, and they destroyed everything for beauty, like beauty shops, like hairdressing shops. All these are closed in Timbuktu and in Gao, Kidal. So women are really confined. They can't do anything.
And I've seen reports of them also destroying some historical sites, things that have been there literally tens of thousands of years.
Yes, mainly in my hometown, which is Timbuktu, where we have about 16 World Heritage shrines and mausoleums. So they decided to destroy all. At the date of today, they have destroyed about 7 of the shrines in Timbuktu, which is really heartbreaking for people in Timbuktu.
And certainly sad. And, you know, when we were there in 2007, this was a country that was a successful democracy.
Oh, sure. I was very proud to be a Malian because here in the U.S., people were talking about Mali as an example of democracy in Africa, and we were very proud of that. But today our democracy is failing. Because in addition to this situation with the rebel groups, we had the political chaos in Mali because we were supposed to have elections this year. Unfortunately, we had this military coup before the elections. And since then, we are in this political chaos. But the hope is today we have an interim government, we have an interim president, and we hope to have the elections. But the issue is, how are we going to have elections in this chaos? Because some people are displaced or they cannot vote because today they don't have any link with the country.
From what I've read, there is a group of the African Federation. They are gathering some troops, hopefully wanting to push some of the
yes, today the
out.
hope is with the West African states. They have an organization called Economic Community of West African States, which is ECOWAS. They are organizing and they want to send military forces in the north and within Mali to reconquer the north, about 3,300 boots. And probably we have another hope that France is helping, France and the European Union is helping to get a resolution at the UN. We already have the resolution 2071, which said to Mali to negotiate with the rebels who are Malians, and also we may have another resolution which will help to have to deploy forces to the north of Mali.
Yeah. Now I know you're out trying to educate people about what's going on in your homeland, but what else can we do here in this country?
Oh, in this country, I think we have a serious humanitarian crisis in Mali. And I think people here, I think organizations in the United States here can support humanitarian relief in Mali. So because I was personally involved in a humanitarian organization, which is local and which was made because of this crisis by ourselves, which is called Cri de Coeur. So people can go on your website, I will give you the information, and then they can support. And they can support the government. I think anyone who can do something can help, be it within organizations. If they need directions, if they need to talk to someone, I can facilitate that. I can also facilitate how they can be in Mali and how they can support, they can bring response to the humanitarian situation in Mali.
Well, we certainly will put up that information as well as your own contact information on our website. Osman, so good to see you. Glad you're safe. Now, if you'd like to learn more about this country that many believe could turn into the next Afghanistan, we have much more on our website. Everything from how women in Mali are finding a new voice thanks to radio, to a segment looking at our country through the eyes of some Malian journalists who came here to work with us. Just go to okhorizon.com and look under our value added section. When we return, foreign aid, foreign investment, and the relationship between the two.
You're watching Oklahoma Horizon, featuring some of the good things that are happening in the great state of Oklahoma.
I know what many of you may be thinking, that while problems abroad are certainly tragic, they're also expensive, with at best uncertain results. Factor in that many needs in our own country, from infrastructure to education, are also going unmet, and the case for foreign aid is increasingly a hard sell. If you will, take a look at these numbers with me. The U.S. is the world's largest donor of foreign aid, totaling some $38 billion in 2010, which is roughly equal to the combined aid of Germany, France, and the U.K., the three countries that follow us in giving. And while we do give the most, that's still less than 1% of all federal spending. But here's what may really surprise you. Foreign aid is dwarfed by foreign investment. Corporations pour almost 10 times as much money into developing nations as our governments do. Now, here in this country, Coca-Cola alone has committed to $30 billion in foreign investment through 2016. If you travel in the developing world, you'll see examples of foreign investment almost everywhere. Remember this picture of me from the story of Mali? I'm standing in front of what was the nicest and the newest government building in the entire country, entirely funded by the now deposed Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. No real surprise that when his government fell, his supporters found their way back into Mali. Money buys influence. It always has, and it always will. But that influence also brings expectations that we here in the U.S. may or may not agree with. Now, if you'd like to see more facts just like these, we have a daily dose on our website, courtesy of our partners at Face the Facts USA. Well, there was a time that education was only for the elite, even in this country. Today, we celebrate the sesquicentennial of the signing of a piece of legislation that changed American education. Here's our Paige Wallace.
Agriculture has hit significant milestones in the last 150 years, but to many, it was the signing of the Morrill Act in 1962 that truly opened doors for America's farmers and ranchers. In the midst of the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln saw the importance of continually spreading the knowledge of agriculture. In May of 1962, Lincoln established the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and later that summer signed into law the Morrill Act. Legislation that would forever affect the lives of farm families, and today still plays an immense role in the futures of hundreds of thousands of young people. The Morrill Act, also known as the Land-Grant College Act, paved the way for the development of institutions of higher education by granting federally controlled land to the states. Schools like Iowa State, Rutgers University, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma State University are all recognized as land grants. Today, their purpose still holds true, to promote the teaching of agriculture, science, and engineering, but also liberal art and the humanities. According to the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, its member institutions now enroll nearly 4.6 million students.
And while the land-grant system was developed to educate every man and every woman, it still left some out, the very same people Abraham Lincoln had freed. Which is why, in that segregated world, it took until 1890 to establish universities for African Americans. Earlier, I was able to sit down with the youngest university president in America of Oklahoma's 1890s historically black school, Langston University. President Smith, what is the role of the predominantly black 1890 land-grant institutions like Langston just in today's society?
Sure. You know, what's really interesting about the history, when you look at the Morrill Act, actually either act, especially the one where a lot of HBCUs derived from, I believe it still plays a relevant role in today's society. But mainly, when I think of the role, is to provide opportunities that will not be provided otherwise for certain individuals. Certainly, when HBCUs were created, it was for African Americans or blacks at the time, but I'm finding in our society there's still many people, whether they're black or not, who don't have opportunities otherwise. And so in my mind, HBCUs in particular, as a result of the land-grant mission, are very relevant and certainly very much needed today.
You know, in the earliest days of the 1890s land-grant schools, they were very skill-based oriented. Does that still have a role in today's education system?
I think it does, but also when you look at what was happening in the late 1800s and early 1900s, African Americans could only go into a certain number of professions. And what's made it challenging, in a sense, good and also challenging for an HBCU is the landscape has drastically changed. The good news is every field of endeavor is open to everyone. You know, employers nowadays, they want good people who could help them build their product and build a company. And the difficulty is, yes, there's still some relevancy in terms of developing certain skill sets, but it's also increased and expanded what universities really have to be about in order to survive. The trick, though, is to stop being all things to all people. And certainly as an institution where we're headed is to figure out what 10, 20, 30 programs can we be highly successful at doing and be highly skilled at training individuals to be successful in that field, and that's what we're going to focus on. We're not going to try to be all things to all people. We're actually going to, at some point, probably reduce some of our programs that are not highly successful in terms of graduating, matriculants. Times change, and you have to be nimble in today's higher educational system to realize that times have changed with certain programs, which means if it's a program that's no longer relevant and it's not producing a lot of potential matriculants, then you have to be willing to do away with the program, or you have to understand why you keep the program and why it's important. For instance, just because it's not a high yield program, it may be relevant to the city of Langston or the city of Tulsa or Oklahoma City, but it's one that you value and the city values, and you keep doing it because of those reasons. But you don't just close a program or open up a new one because it's a hot thing to do. You have to be successful in doing it.
Well, certainly we appreciate the time that you've spent with us today.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Now we have much more with President Kent Smith on our website under this week's Value Added section.
Oklahoma Horizon is now portable. Just subscribe to our weekly podcast. Visit iTunes.com, where you can download our show for your listening or viewing convenience.
Next time on Oklahoma Horizon, we roll around Oklahoma to experience what life is like in a wheelchair.
You can visualize doing this, but until you actually do it, you don't realize what the challenges are. You just think you know what the challenges are. So now I really know what the challenges are, to an extent.
And we end our day with an Oklahoma Roots music jam on Oklahoma Show over the Heartland, Oklahoma Horizon. Well, we are out of time. I'm Rob McClendon. Thanks for watching. See you back here next week.
Thank you for watching Oklahoma Horizon.